Welcome back. You are listening to the Mid Morning Talk on Salam Media. We would like to apologize for being off air a few minutes ago due to a power outage. And we will continue with the broadcast and hope that we do not experience any more. All right, so moving right along, the right school for your child can make all the difference in his or her successful academic career. The good news is that there are many options in education beyond the public school down the road. The bad news is that the abundance of options often leaves parents in a quandary about how to choose the best environment for their children. Joining me on the line is Dr. Ken Resnick, an educational psychologist, and we're going to be talking about what to look for when choosing a new school for your child. And we do know that schools registrations are open for grade ones, and they were open for grade eights. And you know, it is a very daunting task to choose a school which is considered as a right school or a good school for your child. Good morning, Dr. Ken, and thank you for joining me. Dr. Ken, good morning.
Morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Are
hear
you
you.
able to
Thank
hear
you
me?
this
There we
morning.
go. Yes. Thanks for inviting me. Morning.
All right, so first, Doctor, I'd like to know what defines a good school.
I think obviously schools often you just have to look at the principal. You obviously got to get references from parents that have been there. A lot has changed. You've got to look at the size of the classroom, where the kids where the kids are being drawn from. But the main thing with a school is how it's managed, and the principal makes a huge difference. And obviously, his staff, his direct staff, his deputies, and so on. So that makes a big difference to a school. So even if you have a school in a poor area that has a very good principal, often that school is doing really well. To having a school maybe in just a suburban area with a bad principal, where there's no proper structures or the staff is not what they should be, and so on. So it really is up to the principal, but obviously the school has to have a facility, which is very important. They need sporting facilities, the classrooms need to be well equipped with what they need, whether it's chalk, a board, proper ventilation, etc., etc. So there are a whole lot of factors. But at the end of the day, it's not always easy. Parents leave things to the last minute when they can't get their child into that school. It's just not a simple answer. But definitely, if you're in an area, you will have heard from parents, from people that this school really is good. Like the suburb I'm in, there are two schools I'm not going to mention. There are two primary schools. One is very good, and the other one's not that great. And there's a good reason for that, as an example. So the parents all try to get them into the better one, and of course that one is full. But the other factors that have to be taken into account, especially in grade one, is your child's school ready, especially with COVID? Let's talk about the schools, and then you can ask me. But that is my one side of it. The other side is that there's a lot of private schools that are popping up all over the show. Promising parents, small classes, one-on-one teaching. But, I'd be very careful of those schools because often they don't offer extramurals. Kids actually need to be in a bigger, in bigger surroundings because that's their world they've got to deal with. The playground of other kids their age. So if they're not socially well adapted, etc., you might find a lot of these schools promise a lot, or they carry the kids, but also they might be working on some type of educational system, and they don't quite deliver. So I'd be quite wary of any new so-called private schools popping up. And parents go there with a lot of hope because their child might have been struggling before, and now they've been made all sorts of promises. So there's no simple answer for that. So even a so-called private school, they're good ones, and they're not such good ones either.
Yeah, that's true. And about these new private schools that are popping up, I've seen a lot of them in town, especially It was like an old block of flats that has now been converted into a school building. And I always wondered, like, where do the kids play during break time? And do they even have a place to play? Kids need to be stimulated. Their minds need to play as well as much as they want to. Now, what factors should parents consider when selecting a school? What should you look out for when selecting a new school for your child?
Again, I think number one, your school, I would imagine that these kids have been at pre-primary. And pre-primary, but with COVID, there's been quite a dramatic shift in the quality of the child, in the sense that a lot of these kids, parents have become very overprotected. The children have missed far too much school because they're very young. They haven't been properly stimulated. In other words, they're getting on the parents' nerves. They've just been allowed to watch too much TV, and they're coming back not quite school ready. Now, that becomes a big problem, So no matter what school you're looking at, I actually work at a pre-primary school. They're going to feed their kids to schools in that specific town or area or whatever it is. And if that child's not school ready, that's where there's going to be a problem. And of course, what's happening is that at age 7, they've got to go into grade 1. So I think parents have really got to be watching out for, is their child school ready? Because the problem is the schools are being overwhelmed. Teachers, the pressure on teachers to try and close this gap has become enormous. Whereas if they worked with the parents to help, to help the parents understand what they might need to do to ensure that at home the child is stimulated, wants to learn, there's ways of doing that. So parents can't expect miracles if they haven't done their job up to grade 1. And then expect whatever primary school you're going to send them to, if that child is not school ready and is going to battle, no matter what the school is, without the parents understanding their role as well at the younger age, nobody seems to be identifying that. We just left it to the schools to cope with it. So it is something that I believe parents have to be educated to lift up the level of their child, in terms of their maturity, their developmental age, so that they are school ready. But that has a lot to do with how they've been parented at home, in terms of the child being a bit more independent, a bit more disciplined, not too much TV, where they can stimulate themselves, they've been socialized. There's a whole lot of factors that come into play for school readiness. So I really think that we have to focus so much on the grade 1, pre-grade, that's those 2 years, grade R and grade 1, to help the parents understand that they have to play a role in ensuring that no matter what school those children are going to go to, that their child is school ready. Because the schools definitely can't perform miracles in closing that gap.
And I noticed that's also a mistake that parents tend to make a lot, expecting the school to do everything. And the only thing that they do is be the parent at home and maybe even help with homework, or sometimes don't. They'll just be like, do you have homework? Okay, do your homework, and that's it. And the poor child doesn't even understand what is going on. And then what advice can you give to parents like that?
I think, this is where they really need to, one of the problems that I've identified, which we really have to start looking at, teaching should not just be about cognitive teaching. Teachers should be trained, and they're not their fault, to understand that when a child starts developing problems, say, for instance, you've got a quiet little child in the back of the class, got no friends, very insecure, not doing well, the teachers need to be trained to understand that something might be going on at home, where the child is too clingy, too overprotected, never allowed to play with friends, and when he hits the school playground, he becomes quite insecure, scared to put his hand up in class. So instead of just sending that child for an assessment, and they say, well, he's a bit weak at this and a bit weak at that, the role of the parent at that early age is vital to ensure that the child is socialized, stimulated, etc., etc. And unfortunately, the teachers in their training are not being given that information. So the moment they see a kid not concentrating, boom, an assessment, or the child needs medication, etc., etc. So parents really need to understand that they have to play a role in terms of ensuring that their child feels independent, can't wait to go to school, comes home, can't wait to learn, can't wait to do its homework, etc., etc. And if the child comes home and wants the parents to do this schoolwork while we're in a problem, we've got a problem. So what is actually happening now is a trend. Because of COVID, a lot of kids are going back because they have to rather than they want to. And they don't have to listen in class because when they come home, parents are being told, sit and do the homework with them. So the parents are either helping them or an au pair or possibly extra lessons. And what is the message we're giving the child? We're saying, you know what? You don't have to listen in class because somebody's going to help you when you get home. So parents have to understand if a child comes home and does not understand the work, they have not listened to the teacher. So the parents have to encourage the child on their own to go to the teacher and say, Math, I didn't quite understand the maths. Could you please teach me? Rather than the parent being there to constantly help the child, and in the meantime, the child's not interested. The same with reading. Parents really need to understand how to test reading. They're not given any clue. So a child will stumble over 3 pages, parents putting their teeth out while the child is trying to read, and then think that they've actually supervised reading, and they haven't. So the parents need to be given a lot of tools to understand they don't have to be sitting doing the homework for their kids. The kids, a subject like math, have to listen and practice it out. Reading, they've got to practice so that when the parent does listen to them, if they make more than 2 mistakes on a page, you just got to say to them, listen, you haven't practiced enough. You're choosing to go and practice harder, but when you come back and read, these are the rules. So, because it's reading and math that are that's the whole core to learning. And we've got to help the children enjoy the reading and enjoy the maths, etc. But it's up to the parents to understand they have got a job, not to carry their kids or help them or just gloss over their homework, but to ensure that their kids try their best.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dr. Ken, and should factors like fees and the area of the school be taken into consideration?
Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah. But I think it's just mainly look at the school, look at the facilities, look at the behavior of the kids. There's a lot of screaming and shouting in the classrooms. How well kept is the school surroundings. It will definitely play a factor. But definitely do a bit of research about it. Find out, their results. Find out who the principal is, what sort of teachers they've got, or do they have enough teachers? What are the facilities like? You definitely need to investigate all of that. Absolutely. And then look what other schools there are. And parents, unfortunately, don't, or if they leave the application too late, then they don't have much of a choice. They're narrowing down their choices. They've then got to put their child in any school that's available. So they've got to get in early, do the investigation, have a look at the schools, and then apply early.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we're going to be seeing a lot of that with the grade 1s and grade 8s who have not been placed due to parents missing out on the deadline. Dr. Ken, thank you so much for your time and for the tips.
Pleasure. Thanks once again for inviting. Have a good day.
Have one. Bye-bye. Dr. Ken Resnick, an educational psychologist, taking us through what to look for when choosing a new school for your child. Very important, look in your area first. Do some research, as much research as you possibly can do about the school, and don't just focus on one school. Focus on the many schools available in your area, and I'm sure you will definitely find a good school. And by good school, we mean a school that is an okay environment for your child, a school where your child will be allowed to learn and also to play and to be themselves. And I know there's a lot of talk about the school curriculum at the moment, and that it doesn't do much for our children. It doesn't develop them as much as some the other third world countries. So a lot of parents are taking homeschooling into consideration because of that. But if you cannot afford homeschooling, then perhaps your regular schooling system and curriculum can work out for you for now until things get better. And also consider things like fees and transport. If you're going to have to transport your kids to a school outside of your area, you also have to take into consideration the fact that you're going to be paying for the transport, and you're going to be paying for your child's school fees, etc. And there's a lot of things that you should look out for. Also, talk to parents who have kids in the school. Speak to kids who also attend the schools. Ask them questions about what it's like to be there. If they like their school, they will give you their honest opinions and their answers, even if the teachers and principals lie about the schools, but the kids will give you an honest opinion. Anyways, good luck finding a new school for your child, and do so as soon as possible before the deadlines. And do stay with us. We will be right back.